So my sense is we should go ahead and get started, mindful of everybody's time, and I'm sure someone else will join in. If we take any specific action that would require a quorum, we'll deal with it accordingly. So welcome. Good to see everybody. Thank you all so much for your efforts in putting together the different sections of the interim report. The subcommittee's work has been tremendous, and I know it's a lot of time and effort, and we have a lot of things still ahead of us in the next 6 months of our existence as a commission. But I'm very confident we'll be able to accomplish what we need to accomplish, and also importantly, the interim report I think will be a helpful and useful document. And I don't think Jasmine is on, but I know she's done a tremendous amount of work to pull that together, and so it's a great team here, and I'm really proud to be part of it. Very quick, I'm sorry.
Phil, would you? I mean, I'm happy. So Jasmine is not officially on the call today. She full disclosure, she was able to go to Vice President Harris's appearance at M&T Stadium. So I said, please do that. And I will be pulling up and calling up documents. So I'm happy to call up the interim report draft if you'd like, or the agenda, anything you need. I'm capable of that. And she's at a really fun event right now.
Oh, good. Well, good for her. And we'll I'm sure test your document sharing prowess at some point here. But I for one, don't doubt it at all. Okay. With that, why don't we go to the interim report, and I would ask each of the subcommittee chairs, and we'll just go in the order in which these matters appear in the interim report, and would like, well, whatever anybody wants to say is great. Really what I'm looking for is just a brief summary so that all of us can hear a little bit about what the process was the subcommittee used to come up with what's in the initial draft for that particular subcommittee. Things that the subcommittee thinks will need a deeper dive as we go forward. And there are one of the things we'll talk about today, and then again next week when we have a reiteration, the next iteration, if you will, of the draft report, are there things we're ready to recommend? And I think there are, even though we're interim. There are some things that I think are going to require further discussion among us, and that's fine. This is an interim report, not a final report. But I think there are a number of things that the commission did, and I don't think we should be shy about offering those up. So I believe first up on page 5 is construction. So I would ask Commissioner Walsh, also known as Steve, if you wouldn't mind giving us a brief summary.
Thank you, Commissioner Phil.
I've been called worse, thank you.
So we had some great meetings and discussions about the topics that we identified in this draft: on-call contracts, contractor pre-qualification, and then a couple other topics that sort of came out of the discussion. I think the first part of it was the discussion about on-call contracts, and really what the main takeaway was there was not specific guidance or rules within the purchasing manual, and each contract that is let has specific guidance in the documents themselves. So and there was really no task limits or general rules as to how they are going to distribute work amongst multiple firms getting contracts. So the recommendation really is to include some language in the purchasing manual and sort of tighten that up a little bit. Also for AE firms, we're recommending that that the agency should really document why firms aren't part of a rotation. All firms selected should be part of a rotation. So there may be a reason why a firm might not, and that should be documented, and there should be an appeal process if a firm doesn't get any work after being solicited. After all, if they are selected, they should expect to get some work. So that was the first part of it. Any questions about on calls?
I do.
Go ahead, Peter.
I don't know if it's exactly on calls, but there was a contract on the agenda for this coming council meeting where they used the term primary contractor and a secondary contractor. And in the course of discussion during the work session, it was in property management. And Ms. Schindel explained that the expectation was that the majority of work was going to go to the primary, and only in an event of unavailability or something like that would work go to the secondary. And that didn't seem right to me, and it didn't seem consistent with how you have just described on call, as they should be on some kind of rotation basis. So I don't know if you recollect anything like that, or if that could or should be incorporated.
So in our discussions, no, we did not talk about the primary, secondary selections. Again, I think that's I think an agency-specific request when they work with purchasing, that they want sort of a main contractor and don't want to necessarily spread work around. Rose, maybe you can clarify, but that's my understanding, that for those contracts, that's the kind of form contract that they wanted, and that's the contract that you guys let.
Yep, that's exactly right. That the requesting agency, we consider them the subject matter expertise, of course. So with those contracts, they may elect to do primary, secondary, where the thought process is that, maybe it could be that it could be based on like region or location or whatever the case may be. But I would say this, that whatever it is, they do have to justify to purchasing why primary and secondary award is an option. And if we feel like that is currently, if we feel like that is, something that's going to restrict competition, then we will go back to the department. But I definitely cannot address some of the past contracts, but in the present realm, we do ask for justification for primary and secondary contract.
So-
If I'm sorry, go ahead. Someone's going to say
So
something.
wouldn't the primary and the secondary, because I think early on when we first started, after talking with some companies and getting feedback, for example, the resurfacing contract was a primary and a secondary, but they did the same thing. I mean, the companies do the same thing. So it wasn't where one did more services than the other. They were equal. But the secondary never, it was a 3-year contract, never got called. So, so why couldn't it be on a rotating basis? I
And I
know
would-
with the
I'm sorry.
city's demo, they have where they select the primary and the secondary, and they will, based on the amount of work or of houses that they tear down, the primary gets the first batch, and then the second company will then be called in to do some as well.
So one of the things I'm sorry, I don't want to cut across you. Were you done, Ms. Dixon? I didn't want to cut across.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. So one of the things I will say that, departments do take in consideration when they are looking at primary, secondary is the cost. The primary vendor most likely has a cheaper, for example, labor rate than the secondary vendor, and depending on their budget, that rotation really has to be ironed out. But I will agree that Steve, as you mentioned, taking a look at the on-call and beefing up the purchasing manual to provide more directions and, you know, some criterias of when that is applied will probably be necessary. And in addition to that, I'm not sure if the Baltimore County Code may need to be reviewed,
Rose,
as well.
Hey Rose, it's Rob O'Connor from OIT.
Hey, Rob.
Hi everyone. I just want to give you a little bit of perspective coming from my agency. And I agree that, you know, there may be some recommendations and changes that need to be made moving forward. Typically, we used to have just a single award or a multi-award when it came to service contracts. And depending upon the type of work, exactly like Ms. Dixon referred to, things that are done exactly the same. So in my area, say cabling work, typically we would multi-award cabling work because depending upon the volume of work that we may have, and those come in ebbs and flows, we would put out those solicitations to, you know, whether there was 2 or 3 awardees upon that contract, and get pricing back and availability of resources to get a job completed on time. And that would be what you would probably consider more along the lines of an equal distribution of work. The times where a contractor may not get as much work as another contractor is if we were having performance issues with a specific contractor. The single awardee contracts, I know in OIT, for example, let's utilize our data center HVAC maintenance. So we used to have a single awardee for preventive maintenance and for on-call support for our HVAC units. And when we were running under a single awardee, if we had issues with a vendor, or if there was an emergency and a vendor had no resources available, it left the county in a situation where we had to do an emergency procurement or call an outside off-contract vendor. We didn't want to share the work in our data center across multiple vendors because these are large, expensive pieces of equipment. And when you're talking about preventive maintenance, you don't want one contractor coming in and doing preventive maintenance work after another contractor, and then something happens and you get in that kind of situation of, you know, who caused the initial problem. So I don't know if that gave you a little bit more information, but that's kind of why we have primary and secondary in specific areas. And then we do have multi-award when the work can be shared equally.
And thank you for that, Robin. And that's why I mentioned that I'm not going to say that, you know, primary and secondary awardees or a platform of awarding a contract has to be eliminated in its entirety. But I do agree that there should be some sort of criteria and some sort of guidance on when it is used, because, you know, to the point that you just mentioned, Ms. Dixon, is that, you know, contractors, when they are awarded a contract, it is the expectation that they're going to receive some work. So we have to, you know, build in some criteria to address that.
It's very helpful. Thank you both. Steve, you want to move on to contractor pre-qualification?
Sure will, thanks. Contractor pre-qualification, just to summarize, this is a process by which construction companies have to pre-qualify, basically file some paperwork to be able to bid on certain public works type projects. And the process is pretty well defined on the county DPW website. After a lot of discussion with some staff and amongst us, we felt that the process currently works pretty well. There was some changes made to the process in 2019 when they removed a project reference inquiry form, which really was the source of a lot of delays and consternation amongst the construction community. It was always very difficult to get that form signed by an inspector of a project. So once that form went away, I think the process, we've heard from staff, certainly from their standpoint, it's going much smoother, and it seems that the complaint volume is less from the industry. So the recommendation is just to keep the current process in place with a continual monitoring of feedback from the customer community or the contractor community, and then to continue through all the offices involved, Public Works, Procurement, and Carla's office, ongoing training and responding to inquiries about the process.
And I think,
Yeah,
I think some of
one
that.
thing that I would add is that
Go ahead.
to make sure that we notify companies, because we talked about that, Steve, as well, about this new process that's been in place that some companies still aren't aware of, advertising it.
Yeah, and I think the survey, part of the survey goes to trying to find out what people are aware of or not aware of to that point. So it'll be interesting to get that additional feedback. And obviously we can revisit any of this that we need to for purposes of the final report.
And I have one correction. The change was in 2017, July 2017.
Is this it? Is it here where it says August 2019?
Go above, I didn't, go up above that. I think it's in the first paragraph, right there. Amended, oops, go back down with pre-qualification.
We apologize. I don't know where that wrong date came from. I thought it was 19.
Second paragraph there, yeah.
It was
Yeah,
July,
was it?
it was the last, I think it was July 27th, I think. I can check that exact date for you.
But it was in 2017, you said?
Mhm.
Okay, I think I saw it below as well. And then Phil and Mary Dixon, did you want me to reference broader notification? Is this in the recommendation, or we'll just note that
Yes.
for the final?
Well, you can do it for the final, either or.
Well, it could be
And
something
Carlos,
we're going to. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make sure this had to be changed to, or no? This date?
Yes, that's July 2017, it all changes. Yep.
Okay. And then for this notification that's not yet far and wide. Okay.
Wasn't sure what's your question there? Not sure I got that.
Just trying to share some comments while we go.
Oh, okay, great.
One.
Yes, please.
So the next couple items, and these were just sort of some items that came up through broad discussion. Subcontractor availability. I know Pete Plackey had some certainly experience with this, and I've heard this also, that there really is an overall lack of construction subcontractors out there. I know, the lists may say there's availability, but I think the reality might be a little different than the list, at least what some folks have said. So I think the recommendation is just the continuation of the outreach, trying to maybe partnering with economic and workforce development and the engineer, architect, and contractor communities to continue the development of MBE companies, and the continuation of ongoing business training for small companies, as well as the normal outreach that Carl's office does with Meet the Primes and other type of outreach.
Elizabeth, one thing you could capture there is the acronym DEWD ought to spell that out, unless it's used previously and I missed it.
The next one was construction bidding process, and I know it was brought up many meetings ago that currently, due to COVID, they're receiving construction bids via email. So certainly the recommendation is continue the expansion of electronic bidding, or the continuation of the electronic bidding process. Certainly falls in line with all the initiatives of the current administration, making things more seamless and electronic. And then the final recommendation, and this one, certainly can have some discussion or changing in the language, but talked a bit about the goals coming out of the PRG, And the question of whether or not material purchases should be allowed, material purchases through a non-producing supplier. I guess what staff mentioned is that they're seeing more and more of, instead of a company actually bringing in a subcontractor to physically do work, they're just buying products through a minority company, which might be one person, right? So they're meeting the goals that way. That may or may not be the best way to sort of build contractor capacity out there. So really the recommendation is just to study that issue maybe a little more broadly and to continue discussions about that.
May I chime in
Can I
for
add
that,
to-
please? Oh, I'll let Carla go first and then I'll come after her. Thank you.
That
Go ahead.
actually is very timely because the county implemented the DBE program in October of 2020. And in the DBE program, you have to, it's a certain percentage of material supplies that can be counted. So we're contemplating mirroring the DBE program for that. So I think you're right on point with that.
And
Sorry,
that's
Carla.
exactly where I was going, because because I do work in the DBE realm. You're right. If you're using an MBE/DBE supplier, you can only count, I think it's up to 40%. It's either the 40 or the 60. I gotta look, but you can't count the entire piece of that work towards the goal. And I'm glad, I kind of was thinking that was what Carla was gonna say. Is to let's follow what the feds do, and then that way you don't have two different requirements based on where your funding is coming in. You can pretty much keep it the same, whether it's fed, state, city, what have you. You know that supplier percentage is the same, and it makes it easy for staff and for the contractors. But you don't get to count it all. Yes.
Right, and I think also from the state side, I think on for any MB DB program that's serious, the idea is to provide the kinds of meaningful contract work, those kinds of opportunities, as opposed to just, I mean, it's fine to buy materials, but I think in growing the available community, and then those MBEs being successful enough to move beyond an MBE status, the idea is something other than just, well, we'll buy paper, or we'll buy shovels or something from a particular entity. But that certainly deserves further discussion, and that's great. Steve, anything else you wanted to say? That's a terrific summary. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Just real quick, there was a couple other items that our subcommittee was going to tackle in the next, I guess, half of our time here, and they were the standard contract form. I know this was Rick Benetti's issue that he wanted to look into, is possibly putting responsible contract language in. So that was his item. So hopefully the new person on the committee can pick that up, as well as the Bill 102-20 prevailing wage, how that's going to be implemented, and then contract administration, vendor payment, and then AE procurement. So those four topics were going to be studied further over the next couple months. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you, and thank you to everybody on the subcommittee.
I still wanted to comment on my hand.
Please do. I'm sorry. I couldn't see your hand up with the. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So the issue with the MBE supply goes hand in hand with the MBE subcontractor availability. I mean, and the problem is the goals are so high on a lot of these contracts that the subcontractors, MBE subcontractors, are not available to do that kind of work or do the amount of work on similar type contracts. So now the Baltimore County has allowed 100% in the past. State highway and the feds are at 60% for materials. Now I think it's a little bit different. If you buy concrete and it's manufactured by a concrete supplier, I think that might be a little bit different than buying something just like shovels or cones or something like that through a supplier, an MBE supplier. But this one says 60% is the state highway guidelines. I think also federal guidelines.
Bill, this is Elizabeth. I have
Yes.
2 questions. One, was it requested that I add a reference in this recommendation about following the federal process? Well, I know Carla and Carla both spoke to that.
As did
I think,
Peter.
well-
Peter pretty much said the same thing. State highway, i.e. is, they get a lot of federal funds. So if that's the 60%, all 3 of us were talking about. And I don't about Phil, but I think it's, I think, yes, one from Carla Tucker's because she said they're implementing the DBE program. And then 2, maybe just reference to say, at the DOT Department of Transportation, here's the regulation. And if you all need it, I can find that for you. But it's all 3 of us are pretty much saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So Steve, if it's okay,
And
he
then-
says thumbs up. Okay.
Okay,
Okay, I
that's fine.
can't see that. And then my
Yeah,
other.
okay.
Can't see
Okay,
everybody.
and then I had
That's-
another,
that's-
in the name of keeping us, Steve, I tried to take notes, but I'm wondering if, Phil, this is a question for you to then have discussion. If there are future topics and they should be included as we're going to be looking at these things going forward, if they could be emailed to Jasmine so we can know exactly what you want to be and then include it in here.
No,
That would be
that's
really,
that's a great
that would be
point.
helpful. If you want to do that, each group could email that to us so we say it properly.
Elizabeth,
Go ahead.
they
Yeah.
were included in my document
So
Mine
maybe
too.
at the very top
Okay,
of,
then
of
I'll
my
put them on.
document of,
All right, I'll go back and look for them. Okay,
Sure.
great. That's great. I just don't want to make it up.
Yeah, maybe she took them out because since it was for future discussion for the
Maybe
final
it's-
report.
Yeah, or she may, I don't want to
Send them, but-
scroll
The
down.
recommendation is right at the bottom. Right there,
Yeah, I think it's a good, I think it's a good idea. At least we're going to have another draft to comment on. And so I think it's helpful to put it in, and we've got some commissioners who aren't here for this meeting, and we can all get some thought. But I like the idea of staking out some additional things to look at.
Mhm.
Okay, Elizabeth, I don't want to get ahead of you, but can we move on to the next
Yeah, I
report?
can keep. Okay, here we
Okay.
go.
Perfect. I can't see everybody, so I don't know if Dan has joined us. Has
I
he?
can down if you want.
Okay.
No, he has not joined.
I
Oh.
didn't think so.
I do
Okay, so
see
like,
Jermaine has joined us though.
Who?
Who?
Jermaine Jones, Rick Benetti's replacement.
Yes, I'm
Nice
here.
to meet
Hello,
you.
everyone.
Jermaine,
Hello.
well,
Thank you. I was having some connectivity issues earlier where I was only coming on as an attendee and not a participant, but I figured it out.
welcome. We're delighted to have you join us. Look forward to working with you.
Same here. Happy to be here.
Great, thank you. So since Dan is not at this particular meeting, why don't we skip ahead to Minority and Women Business Enterprise, that section, which starts on page 13.
This should-
And you good? And okay, so I believe Commissioner Chambers, can we have your report?
That is so funny to hear.
I decided we're going to get very formal, very formal.
Hello, Jermaine, and welcome to our group. You are Rick's replacement, so if we can get your contact information, at least your email, that would be great, and I can kind of get you caught up on what we've done and where we want to go. So as far as the group is concerned, for Jermaine's point of reference, it's myself, Scott Phillips, who's not here today, Mayor Sheila Dixon, and Pete Plackett. I'm like you, I can't see everybody across, but that's our group. And so the overall for the Minority and Women Business Enterprise Subcommittee is a lot of the deep dive work was done by the disparity report. And I'm sorry, the disparity study report. And so I used chapter 10 based on those recommendations as a basis to start working on our report, because many of the recommendations that were listed, not all, but many that were listed in the disparity report was also discussed with Carla Tucker and Troy Williams. And then some of the cross references with the procurement purchasing subcommittee headed by PETA and Rosetta Butler being in there. And I say that because the biggest bulk for the recommendations was to pull the MWBE committee out from underneath procurement so that those two departments could function separately, which means that the MWBE committee needs its own budget because they're eating up all of purchasing's budget when it comes to staff. And the other big takeaway is that the MWBE needs its own staff. And so there is information laid out in the disparity study and pretty much a mirror of what we received when we had our conversation with Carla Tucker and Troy Williams. So I'm not going to reiterate all of that. The one, the first big piece is to codify the MWBE program. Right now, it's an executive order that has been done twice, and we need to codify it. And as I said, according to the make it a part of county code legislation, and it is a bill to be introduced by the county executive. I sit on the purchasing subcommittee meeting with PETA, and she had Susan Durbin. Did I saying her name correctly?
Dubin.
Attorney.
Dubin.
Okay, thank you. She was in our group, and so I was able to talk with her about that. And she said the best way to do that is to have the county exec introduce the bill, because of course this is his commission. Have him introduce the bill to the county council so that it could be codified as law. That's first and foremost. And the number two was that Carla Tucker's office, i.e. the MWBE commit office, should report to Troy Williams, and that portion is already taking place. But to take it away out from underneath procurement, but of course there's a dotted line because of the work that they do. And and also as it related to staff, they do have budget to bring on 2 more people as of July 1 with the new fiscal budget, but that it's nowhere near what they need to get this office to the place where it needs to be. Number 3, I had as bring back the procurement review group. I did. It is already there. It's already in place. But what I needed to say was to reevaluate and implement the MBE commission. And that is a commission in the past that was comprised of small business owners. Instead of using small business owners, because those persons could end up bidding on future work, is to have sensitive-minded people on this committee, such as attorneys. There's a couple that I rattled off. Robert DeShields, Franklin Lee, Lisa Harris Jones. These are people that have done work on the city side, and when they're reviewing various pieces of legislation or rules or regulations or even certifications on behalf of the city, and those persons, 1, they're attorneys, and 2, they don't bid on work, or 3, or you can use business organizations such as the Minority Contractors Association, other associations where there's a representative to be on the MBE commission, but in no part are they individually or their organizations bidding on work out from the county. So right now we'll put this as a future, and Elizabeth, and we'll send this to you, is that we will, that's going to be our future work, is to look at the current, and it was shut down, the current MBE commission's information, and then rework it to what we want it to look like going forward. And I will work with, we will work with Carla and Troy to make sure it aligns and, we're not skewing off to the side on that. Anything else before I go forward? Anyone want to add anything to those first three? Okay. Number 4 was the MWBE business owners past experience. And as of 2017, the county allowed the business owner to count their experience on past projects to be counted towards their new business, meaning you may have worked for another company and you want to start your own firm. Your past experience counts as experience for what you're doing with your firm. And while that has occurred since 2017, we wanted to make sure that it is, again, something that is codified as well. Training, money for training. And this is where Carla's office, as Rosetta said, eats up a lot of her budget, is because of the various types of training that the MWBE committee have to have. So there is gaps in the training budget and who needs to be trained. However, in talking with Troy and Stacy Rogers, there is money that they have in this budget, and they're looking to put in the next fiscal year's budget to make sure that money is available for the required training that is needed by the MWBE committee. And so there's a list of all the different types of training that's there. Anyone?
I just wanted to mention that under number 5D, PRISM, I think that's misspelled. You might want to just check that. PRI.
Oh, yeah, it should be ISM. Yeah.
Yeah. Just for a matter of completeness. Thank you.
And again, as we go through and edit, I'd like to, at least the first time an entity or organization or program is used, I'd like to say the full name, then we could use the acronym after that.
Can I make a comment on number 4?
Please.
That
Write
was
it out.
That was an additional change to the pre-qualification process. That actually was a part of that change to assist in pre-qualification to try to get more vendors to bid as a prime. So number 4 pertains to pre-qualification.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Carla. Okay. The budget funds to market the MBE program slides into what Steve was talking about in reference to while he was mentioning, there needs to be some expansion in that. That's one of the things that we mentioned as well. And that's largely in part because, as Carla often tells me, I was hired to do the marketing and outreach, and then I got everything else dumped on me as people left, the program expanded. And so what happens? Marketing, training are the last 2 things that are priority, and they're the first 2 things that get dumped. So for us to put this in here to have a marketing budget, that in turns helps construction when they're saying we don't have enough subcontractors. And let me put the caveat in that, because the minority business community will say, what do you mean there's not enough subcontractors? Well, my experience is there might be enough in number, but when it comes down to scope and what a subcontractor can do is the difference. And so Peter kind of made comment of might not be large enough. And so, and it could be that we have both large and small subcontractors, but if everybody is working, then there's still a shortage. Or if there is a requirement about the number of people that have to be a subcontractor, years of experience or licenses and things of that nature, or certifications in that type of work, then there could be an issue. So it's not just going out and increasing the number of minority contractors. It's also making sure that we have the right type of work that they are doing as well. I've actually experienced that with the weatherization program, and they were talking about HVAC. Well, we had a lot of HVAC contractors, but they didn't have the license to do weatherization work to do, that was required. It was a different type of certification. So that's when you start getting into the weeds. What I would ask is from prime contractors like Peter, from Steve Walsh in the construction department, is to help this is just a one-off, is to help the MWBE committee to say, we have these specific type of work where we have voids, because that helps Carla's department and or whoever the person's going to be to do the outreach to find those companies that have those specific voids, because you have certain solicitations that are coming up that are going to require a specific type of work. And then Carla or in her office can work with the Minority Contractors Association, with Sheila's group and other groups to help find those companies that have that specific type of work, to get them into the system, get them certified if they're not. And then you solve that issue. Does that make sense? Yes, no, maybe?
This is Carla. That makes perfect sense to me. And that was actually the reason why Meet the Primes was established too. That was one of the reasons, so that the prime because there's no outreach, no educational workshops taking place at that event. It's strictly primes introducing or meeting potential subs, so they can do that. So they can actually categorize the subs that they come in contact with, because we don't have that.
And Steve, I can't see you with this, but does that help with your subcommittee group?
I think it falls right in line with what we were talking about.
Okay, thank you. And Steve, if you and I can have a conversation, and even with Sheila, because she has the organization, and to kind of help flush that out for both of our committee, I'm more than willing to talk with you, just to talk as far as recommendations, what we can do on the outside to help you all staff on the inside to make that happen going forward. Okay?
Sure.
All righty. Let's see. A big one for Ms. Tucker is number 7, agency compliance officers. And this is to help the MWBE office with setting goals on the solicitations. Right now, Carla is doing it. What was it? I had a number listed in my report about the number of contracts that she has to review every year, and it's just too much. Not to, oh, there it is. 1,100 master contracts, 70 purchase orders, and that's just a lot. So if we were able to get an MBE officer at the agency level to help Carla to do the work, it takes a lot of pressure off, and it would probably move the process a little bit faster as well. Now, the question becomes, and I'll let Carla say this, the question, and you can say yes or no, Carla, is do you have someone in agency that you designate as that compliance officer, or do you hire someone new? And that was a question that came up that we cannot answer. Go ahead, Carla.
First, I wanted to say it's actually 1,200 master agreements.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
I'm glad you said that, because I thought 1,100, that wouldn't be too tough. Carla's very competent. 1,100 should be easy.
She can do that. It's the extra 100 that's the problem, right?
The extra 100.
You got my vote now.
And as far as I don't know the answer to that question. I can just say that. I don't know the answer to that question, if it would be someone that would be hired outside or someone that's already internal, because to my knowledge, the only 2 people that know anything about the MBE program in the county is myself and Warren. So I really have no idea.
So right now, there is no compliance that happens unless y'all get involved.
We are the compliance people.
What about the responsibility of the project or contract manager? They're supposed to be implementing the contract. I'm thinking mostly of construction right now, so forgive me if I'm missing something. But they're supposed to be managing the contractor and the contract and seeing that the terms of the contract are being fulfilled, and checking the invoices. isn't that part of a project manager, contract manager's responsibility?
I would think, but
Steve, do you have a comment?
Steve Space.
Yes. No, you're right. It really depends on how Baltimore County wants to set it up. So in the past, everything dealing with the MBE compliance was shifted to Carla's group. So a project manager could, with proper direction and guidance, make sure those contracts meet the goals that are in the contract. So
It doesn't remove the compliance need in Carla's operation, but that's the nitty gritty of the information gathering and, you know, checking the numbers. In my book would be the responsibility of the project manager, contract manager.
they're tracking everything else anyway. They're making sure they don't overspend and making sure the delivery or the deliverable meets the contract anyway. So it would be just something else that they would need to do.
Actually, can I make a comment?
Please.
So, well, that was the purpose of the PRISM program.
Of the what
that all the
program?
PRISM.
PRISM.
Yeah. So all the contract payments and everything is to minority contractors are tracked by that, and that's there should be a report easily available, and I think everyone I can access it. I don't know that where the contractor stands, how much the minority subcontractor has been paid. That's the whole purpose of PRISM. And once I think that gets running a little bit better, or there's more of those modules added to it, that should be a very easy fix. It's very, I mean, what you pay the contractor, we have to report that on a monthly basis. As a contractor, we report that monthly.
Right.
Yeah, but also compliance is not just the payment. It's also whether or not that subcontractor is actually on the job, if there are issues between the prime and the subcontractor, based on the scope of work or change orders, things like that. I mean, I guess the project manager could kind of carry on some of that role as well.
The first place you have to begin with is see if a minority subcontractor has been paid. If there's been no payment to a minority subcontractor that's listed, then there's obviously an issue. So, but that, I mean, it should be very, that's what I thought the whole PRISM thing was about.
I like the comment.
Yeah.
I like the comment on that. Perfect observation, Pete. And that's exactly how it's supposed to work, but not all of our contractors are doing it. So which would require me or Warren to call, and we have to do that follow-up. And that's what we don't have the time to do, because we're on the front end reading solicitations before they're advertised, making sure that the scope, there aren't any barriers in the scope before it's advertised. We're reviewing the MBE plans when they come in, signing off for the buyers so they can make their awards. And then we still have to do the compliance piece. And it's just the two of us doing that whole process. So the two of us,
I'm hoping,
the process.
Yeah,
The two of us are in the process from the beginning to the end. Say that again, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, I'm hoping that as you get more people on your staff, that compliance is actually works, because it's not fair for me as a contractor that we stay on top of the compliance and we fill out all our paperwork and it gets turned in, and our competitor doesn't do it at all, so.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
we need to see that as consistent. I think once you have the people on staff and you have all the modules in PRISM working, I think it should work pretty well. The only question is that if the contractor is not in compliance, what happens then, and who is responsible for calling out the contractor to make sure he gets into compliance?
Right, that was, yeah.
And that is a body, right? And then again,
Right.
on the front end, what my piece is helping Carla's office in the goal setting process. So while a lot of the discussion was on the back end, she also needs the help on the front end before it even hits the street. And I'm going to let Carla talk for herself.
So when the projects come in to our section, to Warren and I, Warren receives the from Public Works, he receives the engineer's estimate. So he has that scope breakdown of what's going to be involved in that particular construction project. When it comes to the purchasing side, we may get something that says mowing services or field replacement, but there's no engineer's estimate because we don't know what the projects are until the master agreement is awarded, and then the scope is determined at time of need, right? So we don't have engineer's estimates to do. So I'm actually reading the scope, looking to see if there's any potential opportunity based off of text, not engineer's estimate. So that 1,200, that's 1,200 reads that I'm processing before it gets advertised. And I'm looking at everything from health and human service contracts to construction projects to architecture engineering to commodities. I'm looking at commodities with the service. All of that comes through me. All of that actually comes through me. Public Works construction, Public Works architecture engineering is coming through Warren. So the 70 contracts is the construction is Public Works side. The 1,100 or the 1,200 contracts is coming out of purchasing side. So it's a different, the goal setting process is completely different on the purchasing side than it is on the Public Works construction side. It's a lot of reading, and you have to understand what you're reading a little bit. You have to have some kind of understanding of what you're looking at. I'm looking at to see if we're putting in license requirements or certification, I'll say certification requirements that may be is it a national certification that's accepted as opposed to a more regionalized certification for the same type service. I've actually had to have solicitations redone, sent back to the agency asking, why aren't we accepting the national certification for this same thing to open up opportunity? So, and then also I'm looking at years of service requirements. Are you asking for 10 years or 20 years when you only really need 5 years? So there's a lot more involved on my side, on the purchasing side, than it is on Public Works construction side. So
we hear you, and you've already exhausted me. I don't know how you keep up with what you have. So we understand the challenges of having too much to do and not enough people to do it, not enough time to do it. So that perspective is very helpful. Let me ask you, just because we do want to be sure we cover everything on our agenda today. Commissioner Chambers, I think you had a couple more numbered points here. You want to address those quickly and
real quick. So what Carla is telling you when she says it's Carla. It's not the department. Which goes back. Yeah, no, I'm saying which goes into the number 10 about creating a succession plan pipeline for not just having people in the office, but for them to understand the work and know how to do the work. So I just want to, talk about that right there. If people can have an opportunity to read number 10 or what that takes place.
I have a quick question, Carla.
Carla,
Yes,
you have a question. Go ahead.
Number 8, I don't know what MD PTAP is.
Neither do I.
Sorry, I'll write that out. It's
That's fine.
Maryland. Go ahead, Carla. I'm sorry. Who's
Maryland Procurement Technical Assistance Program? It's actually C. It's actually a C. Maryland Procurement Technical Assistance Center.
I went, just to let you know, I went to that link, and it told me that was a dangerous link, so I did not proceed further.
Make sure we get it corrected. Yeah.
Pete, you don't have to explain your internet searches. You don't have to explain your internet searches. It's all fine.
I thought it was a vaccination. That's because I'm a grandmother. What do I know?
Okay, real quick. So we've seen, of course, the recommendations outside of the disparity study. I'm going to hit the 2 that Pete had a question about. Those were the 2 that no one else said anything in reference to the disparity study recommendations. As I mentioned in reference to the number of days for paying once the prime gets paid.
Carla, can you send us to a number, so we can all be looking at the.
All right, I'm sorry. Let's start with, let me see, because this is different.
Start
Let me
with
see.
A.
Yeah, the bid discount on construction contracts, when, it was the 5% piece. I know Pete had a concern about that. And my
We're gonna have a
response to,
great pushback from all the contractors in Maryland, because first of all, I think it's illegal. I'm not sure it's even legal in Maryland to do that. And secondly, it's not, we don't believe it's fair, period. I'll just let it at that.
and we're set for the pushback. I'm put it this way, Carla is set for the pushback. I do know that at the federal level, DOD will give a 5% preference for 8A firms that are doing work at the Department of Defense.
Yeah, that's Department of Defense. It's not, State of
Okay.
Maryland does not allow this.
So we can continue to have the conversation. We will see what law says. We'll see what county law says to flesh it out.
Yeah.
It is a recommendation. It's not law. And that can be one of the quote recommendations that we'll continue to study.
It's not gonna be one of my recommendations, sorry.
Yes, sir. No problem. No problem.
And Carla, when we flush it out, we can, not now because we don't have the time,
Right.
is look at the pros and the cons on it and why we would get the pushback.
Yeah, and Pete, would you do that for us, please? From your perspective, please if you would email the subcommittee and let us know what the cons are from your contracting community, that would be helpful. Thanks, Mayor Dixon. I appreciate that. Okay. And if there's any room for negotiation, we'll take that too. And if it's a straight out no, then at least we know where you all stand on that. Okay.
Can I ask a basic question, Carla, please?
Sure.
And that is, has the county decided that it's accepting the recommendations of the disparity study in total? Are they planning to implement them all in one fell swoop? Are they prioritizing? Where's the county on the outcome of the disparity study?
I submitted responses to it, but I have not received whether or not it's been approved, our responses to the study. So we don't know if it's
Okay.
accepted yet.
Okay, so that's to be
who was it
determined.
submitted to?
Sorry?
Who in the county was it?
It's submitted to the administration.
Okay. Then the other disagreement was, trying to find it. It was the
Number
prompt
11,
payment.
Prompt payment, yep.
Yeah, which
We
number?
discussed that previously about prompt payment, and I brought up previously that the state highway has a 10-day prompt payment provision, and we're all okay with that as contractors. I mean, most of the contractors are okay with it, okay? The ones that pay their bills. But 5 days is just not workable.
So please tell me why 5 days is not workable once you've received payment from the county. I'd like to hear your side.
Yeah, well, first of all, if it gets mailed from the county, okay, now some things are done electronically, but I don't know if the county does anything electronically yet or not as far as payment is concerned. So when does it start? Does it start when you send a check, and we might get it? It might take 5-6 days to get it to us. And who can say when the contractor actually got payment, because they're going to say, oh, well, I didn't get this for 10 days. And then, so who starts the clock? Okay, that's going to be a big argument to begin with. And then once we get the proper estimate, we still have to get approvals from different levels in the organization, from the project managers up through the accounting department. And, that's a couple days there. 5 days is just unrealistic.
I lost you on that part. I lost you on the part about getting approval. I'm talking about the check is cut.
I think he's
So
talking
what
about
approval-
within their within the bid,
Yeah,
their
within,
particular
within our
business.
organization, we can't process it that quick. And what I'm saying is you cut the check, but it may take 5 to 10 days just to get it in the mail to us. So it's.
Carla's gonna, okay, let Carla Tucker respond, please.
Pete, I'm with you. We are still looking at modeling things after the DBE in state of Maryland. So I'm with you. I hear you. I understand what you're saying. We are looking to model. My recommendation to some of the responses to the disparity study was to model some of the things after the state of Maryland or the DBE program. So
Thank you. Yeah,
So,
10 days.
The
is
state of
relatively-
Maryland, yeah, but a lot of MBEs and WBEs have criticism even with the state of Maryland's program because of how long it does take, even longer than that. If the prime gets the check, no matter if it's 5 days or 10 days, if it's electronically or in the mail, after that period, they're going to get that check once that project is completed. And so that sub then has to sometimes wait even longer to chase down because the prime then comes back and says, well, you didn't submit this right, or it's like, I mean, that's one of the biggest complaints the subs have.
So
And
that's
why
why-
they're
We talked about
frustrated.
retention,
that's why I
too.
said,
That's
or
a
the
different
DBE program. The DBE program was implemented in October of 2020, or is being implemented, but it's being flushed out still finally. But we did make a little change in the DBE program, a little different than the state when it comes to prompt payment. So, but I have to get approval from upstairs before I can
I
share.
can say is I've worked,
Say
I was
anything.
chairman of the Maryland Transportation Contractors Association and Material Contract Association 2 years ago. And we have never had a complaint under the new state law with the 10-day period. And we have minority contractors in our group as well. And I can tell you, I've not had, the complaints come when it's after 10 days, but no one has had a complaint within the, about getting paid within the 10 days.
I'd like to add a comment or a question, Phil.
Go ahead, and then I think, then we'll.
We're gonna wrap it up.
we'll move on, but please go ahead, Peter.
Okay. Because I also had brought up the subject many meetings ago about prompt payment.
Yes,
I was thinking in terms of the county's responsibility for prompt payment. And I noticed in the legislation that just passed in the General Assembly that there's something going into effect October 1 of this year that has stipulations as far as the timeliness on the state and its agencies. And so I didn't read the details, but they're talking about the state not waiting 30 days to pay, but 15. Or in some cases, not waiting 45 days, but in 15. So I would like to see reflected that there's a reciprocal responsibility on the part of the county. as
Faster the contractor can get payment from the agency, the faster it can release, the contractor can release the funds to all the subcontractors. But you're absolutely right. We would like this, with electronic transfer of funds, this could shorten the process tremendously. And that's, hopefully the county will look at that as well.
Sure.
Could I add something? I know
Very quickly, please.
very quickly. So I just want to say that currently the county is looking to boost up the electronic fund transfer option. We have a phase 1 in place, and we're trying to reach at least 50% of our vendors who we've paid in the last 2 years to have them set up by this June 30th. So we are definitely moving with that. And then I also just want to make a notation that there are only 4 people in our disbursements department that pays all the bills for the entire county. And as of today, I have been advised that 2 of those 4 will be retiring this year. So I just want to put that in in the conversation.
That's very helpful information. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, well, it sounds like a couple of those things that you brought up, Carla, will bear further study, and we'll sort those out. We'll look forward to everybody sharing the information that they.
All of that out to determine.
Yes. Yep.
Yep, thank
great.
you.
No, thank you. Great report, and thank you everybody on that subcommittee. We're going to hear from Peter next, but before we do, very quickly, Commissioner Morheim, Delegate Morheim has joined us, and you may please meet our newest fellow commissioner, Jermaine Jones. There you go. You're all set.
Excuse me, before we,
Oh, yes, sir.
go
Yes,
on
sir.
ahead, there was just one other issue I noticed, just the other day.
Okay.
It kind of slipped by me real quick, but on page 19, there was a situation about implementing an owner-controlled insurance program, that the county should implement an owner-controlled insurance program on these contracts. And most of us contractors are not going to be in favor of that, because we're also, our particular company is involved in a captive insurance, and we can't, we're not going to be able to bid on a contract that requires that type of thing. So just so you know that.
All right, we'll give that one further study as well. Okay, Peter, could you talk to us please about the purchasing office? Some of the things we've heard a little bit about, just in terms of, I think this is one of the things I know that Peter and other commissioners identified early on, was just the need to expand the number of people doing purchasing and monitoring and reading of draft RFPs and the like. So Peter, would you give us your report, please?
Yes, and thanks to the great people that were working with me, Carla Nelson Chambers and Steve Walsh, and super help from Rose and Carla Tucker and Susan Dubin. As Phil mentioned, a number of the things that I included have been referred to already, and I leave it up to Jasmine and Elizabeth to decide how best to integrate those. It's never mind to our subcommittee if, when we talk about the PSC, that those go into PSSC, that those go into the construction segment, et cetera. Clearly, the staffing issue is critical. And so we spent some time elaborating on that and why it's critical. So with Rose's help, we got some numbers pulled together to demonstrate to the people who'll be reading the report and to the administration exactly the status of the need. And I hope that those things are persuasive. Training is let me just say one more thing about staffing. I don't include it in particular. We didn't include it in particular, but we did make reference to the fact that this issue of training is throughout the agencies in the county. It's in addition to procurement and its staff. And I know from my own experience that the numbers of staff has been so whittled down over the years in all of the agencies. So it's not surprising that people in public works don't have the time or resources to do maybe what we think they could or should be doing. I know the same is true even in the county council's auditor's office. It's amazing what they do with the few people they have, and I feel that way about all of the agencies that I've dealt with. So I think however we can elaborate on the need for people who are involved in procurement throughout the county. Because as we've said, all of the departments have something to do with buying things and services. And so they need to be exposed to the training, to the procurement requirements, to the legal requirements, to the MBE requirements, to the ethical requirements. And it needs to be on an annual basis, and they need to sign off, just like they do about the IT policy that they know, they're not supposed to use email for personal use. I was shocked to see that in the what's now called purchasing manual, that the P card training only occurred when someone was issued a procurement card. End of story. That is not adequate. That also has to be on an annual basis. So over and above the details that I included, I do think, and I make this case, that we should be talking about Rose's operation as a procurement operation. Purchasing is only one aspect. Compliance is another aspect, and there are others. And procurement is what all of the certifying agencies and professional organizations refer to. So that is a recommendation. I also had raised the question, although it's not in the write-up from the subcommittee, about whether or not disbursements actually belongs in a procurement. To my way of thinking, it's, an accounts payable function that is better done by people who are on the more finance side of things, but that's just a topic for discussion. I want to leave time for Dan and others. I also refer to the disparity study and to the Office of the Inspector General study on P-card abuse and the recommendations that her office has made for improving P-cards, which I think are certainly worth considering. One other general topic before I quit. In our charge from the county executive, which is at the very beginning in the introduction to the interim report, I'm reminded that property and fleet management systems are also in our charge. And we've done work towards all the other items mentioned, but I don't recognize that we have taken on anything having to do with property and fleet management.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone on the subcommittee. Any comments before we move to Dan's subcommittees? All right, thank you, Peter, and everyone on the subcommittee. All right.
Can I just ask?
Oh, yes, of course.
What's one thing? Since Peter talked about the fleet management, I think once we flush that out, that's going to be a link to Dan for sustainability with some of the stuff that we were talking about there. And then Peter, if you can read the chat, please. I sent you, I put it to everybody, but I just I need you to do something for me, please, so we can move forward in reference to that owner control insurance piece. Thank you.
I thought you were raising your hand to chair the fleet management subcommittee, but we'll wait and see how that goes. No, I can't hear you. Okay. So Dan, could we, in whatever order you like, and I think some people may have noticed, because there is a county code subcommittee, which Dan is kind enough to chair, and I think through a cutting and pasting error, there were some provisions that didn't make it into the report. I think everybody's gotten them now, and then the next iteration, obviously, it'll be included. But whatever order you prefer, Dan, please go ahead.
Okay, well, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Make sure you can hear me. And Jermaine, nice to meet you. So I'll do code revision first. That was basically Scott Phillips and me. And there were several issues. The code is really out of date and just a really inadequate document. It needs a complete do-over. It's missing many things, ranging from appropriate definitions of disability to MBE and so on. It also has this one peculiar statement, which Scott, as a very astute attorney, identified, which was that the manual takes control over the code instead of the code over the manual. I had occasion, for another reason, to be in conversation with Council President Julian, and I mentioned that to him, and he was shocked. He was astonished. So the whole document there needs revision, and then the manual needs to be revised to reflect what the code says. And really the order is charter, code, manual, not mixed up. And it's the only section apparently of all the code where there's an exception to the code being followed. So that really needs a complete rewrite. And in the report, we outlined a number of the problem areas. So that's pretty much it on the code part, but that's going to take an act of the county executive and the county council and somebody in the law office and other departments to rewrite it.
Yeah, you're so right about that. And there's I think a pretty interesting separation of powers issue when the code is adopted by the legislative branch, if you will, of county government, and then the executive branch through the manual, which would then trump what the duly elected branch comes up with. So it's interesting. Thank you for identifying that.
And in any case, it just needs to reflect the reality of the world today. It was written a long time ago, and there's parts that are just, I mean, I'll give you one other example. The sustainability section in it is about, and there's 17 pages to the code. There's 3 pages devoted to, in the disability section, in the disability section, to assisted hearing devices, which is fine for the deaf community. Of course, we support that. There's no other disability mentioned, nothing. So it's that kind of shortfall that's needs correction all the way throughout. It's going to be a huge task for somebody, but an important one, so we have a sound foundation to go forward. That's it on that. I'll move on to sustainability.
Any questions or comments about that section for Dan or his committee? Okay, please go ahead, Dan. Thank you.
So sustainability, Carla Nelson Chambers, Sheila Dixon. We were also helped a lot by Megan Bennett of the county department. I want to also thank Delegate Dana Stein, who was vice chair of the environmental community, who had some additional language in there, and especially Rich Keller, who works for the Department of Solid Waste Management and Recycling. And so we met, had a couple of meetings on that and a lot of email exchanges. Also want to thank Carla Nelson Chambers for bringing in the Wallace family group on solar panels and the issues around that. But we came up with a very strong statement on that, and actually we were aided by the county executive, who went ahead towards the end of our process with the statement that the county would make giant steps forward to alternative energy. So we put that right at the front, and we thought that was a great thing. There are many steps to be taken, but we're also helped here by Rich Keller. He sent an email today about 1 o'clock that revised the code portion of sustainability. And his expertise and working with the other people, we think that's an excellent part. So I kind of inserted that both in the sustainability part and in the code revision part. But it was very much appreciate him, basically rewriting the code for the sustainability. And it would put Baltimore County on the forefront, green in everything. It's everything from recycling to purchasing to disposal of waste products. Fleet vehicles being electronic. Carla Nelson had brought up eco districts really throughout, and I think it was a really solid long range view. Also supporting the new sustainability officer, who was not appointed when we started this process, and making sure that person has enough staff, and right on down the line. So I think it's a very strong, comprehensive statement that looks at many facets of sustainability and how the county can really be a national leader, an exemplar of how to act. And at the same time, I think we all believe it's fiscally responsible and environmentally prudent, and is the way to go. So that report is there for everybody to read.
I have a couple of questions, Dan, if I may.
Okay, Peter, I'm afraid of your questions, but go ahead. They're always so astute, but hit me.
No. And maybe my questions have been superseded by the update that I haven't had a chance to look at. But on the first page, towards the bottom, you're talking about subcommittee evaluation recommendations. All solicitations should have sustainability components and included with credit. I didn't understand included with credit, what that.
I think the idea here is that that would be part of the contract, and so an element of the contracting, besides all the performance and cost, there would be an element of sustainability that could count towards somebody winning the contract.
Okay.
But we obviously didn't make that a determination of what that should be or how it should be measured.
Okay. So it's part of the selection process that they would get bonus points for certain things,
Right.
including
Exactly.
sustainability. Okay.
Right.
Okay. And then now one question and then one suggestion maybe. Under purchasing the maximum level of recycled products, I can't give you a page number because all my pages came out page 8, so sorry about that.
Okay. Is this in the code? Is it, Peter, just so I can track with you? Is
No,
this in the
it's the state.
code? Is this in the code revision?
Sustainability.
Is it in the code
Sustainability.
section? Oh, sustainability. Okay, I've got to go to a
No.
different document. Okay.
So it's on the third page of the sustainability section. The county shall test recycled products wherever needed to determine to users that recycled products meet quality needs. I don't know whether you're referring to testing at the landfill of the bales of plastic or what? I don't understand that. And you don't have to answer now because I don't want to take more time. My
That's okay.
last question is, you don't really include demolition in a lot of your lists of printing, building, road construction, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah,
And
in the revised,
demolition-
yeah,
Okay,
in the revised version, that part is attached, is in
Okay.
there. That's much
Okay,
more
great.
of that is in there.
Okay.
I couldn't find the
you.
middle point, so maybe you can email me offline because I'm toggling between the new document and which is just code revision and
Yeah,
the
I
entire
will.
document. So we can address that.
I will.
And thank you, Danny. The other thing on sustainability is, and I think this was in my updates email of recent vintage. The county has a new sustainability officer starting in May. We're going to have her come in June. So there will be more to do on sustainability. The recommendations we feel we can make now, we will. Some things may require further study, and we will look more at sustainability. I don't think we're closing anything off. It's just the questions we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, what the commission at this juncture feels comfortable recommending. And because there are some other things that need study, but that's very helpful. And I, Dan, appreciate your and your subcommittee's work and energy on this. Did anybody have any questions about the sustainability part? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Carla.
Hi, just for people's reference, Dan talked about eco districts. If anyone has time, like we don't, to go to ecodistricts.org. It's this is more than just something that the quote county would take on. This is something that every citizen in the county, if we decide that we want to embrace it, this becomes a residential program for residents, communities, things of that nature, for all of us to be conscious of what it means to be green. So I just want to give you an idea of what that is. It's not so much as a, county is only doing this, but this becomes an all-inclusive program. And it's an organization that is recognized worldwide. So it's a do-good thing, but it's very helpful. And I found out about it because Atlanta's airport is the first airport to be registered an eco district. They are making everything green and sustainable and recyclable. They're not playing. So it's a really, really good program.
Yeah, Carla had brought that up, and I think it's an excellent point because it goes beyond necessarily our technical definition of purchasing and procurement, but the county can certainly influence citizens and communities to take action steps because it all boils down to the same air, the same water, the same everything. So that's why it's included in the report.
Maybe there'll be a sustainability commission. Yes, Ms. Butler.
Actually, that is one of the recommendations.
Got it. Go ahead, Ms. Butler.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So many years ago in my state experience, that's where I met Mr. Richard Keller. And at that point, we met with the State of Maryland Department of General Services. They had a green committee some years ago. And so I wasn't sure whether that committee is still active and whether there would be some recommendation that, the county may engage or maybe become a partner in that committee as a way of trying to, continue to be efficient with green initiatives.
Well, I think that's something we can certainly look into as part of the continuing sustainability review that we do, and we talk to the sustainability officer when she comes to talk to us. I think anything that has been, and also that may fold into best practices too. So anything that is worthwhile or sounds worthwhile that someone else has been doing and has some experience and can tell us whether it's what the pros and the cons are and the practicalities, that'll certainly inform what we do next or talk about next with respect to that subject.
If I could just jump in, Phil, it's a very good point, and we list a number in the statement of agencies to work with, including BGE, Maryland Energy Administration, Chesapeake Bay Trust, and others, the University of Maryland Master Gardener Program. So I think it's, to the extent that there's state agencies focused on this, we could certainly add that the Sustainability Director and Commission would coordinate with them.
Sure, and that's great. Okay, good. One more question from Ms. Tucker, but then we will need to move on, but please go ahead.
Just any consideration to have an MBE, WBE being a part of the sustainability in any way? We have to sustain the community, so.
I don't think Commissioner Chambers is in favor of that.
Just a thought. I mean, because one of the things that I started doing was prior to Mr. Howie, I see Mr. Howie's on a call, I started working with economic workforce development to try to help grow those businesses by sharing the resources that Baltimore County has that they could tap into to try to sustain. So I don't know if there was any type of consideration for MBE, WBE to educate them on the things that we're trying to do in government, as well as sharing the resources, in addition to sharing the resources internally with them. Just a thought.
Well, I think that's one of the things we can, again, as we move forward after the interim report, that's one of the things we can fold in. But that's a great point. Thank you very much.
And I just want to make sure the code revision part is added to that list of subcommittees, and all that paperwork that kind of got lost gets included in the final version of the interim report, which is only an interim report anyways. Thanks.
Well, we want to be inclusive, and there's been a lot of work done on that, and it's they're great points. So that segues, and I want to thank everybody who presented a report and everybody who served on subcommittee, because you guys have done a spectacular job. It's great. So let's jump now to the next item on the agenda, which is, the title is Interim Report Logistics and Timeline for Review. Let me say a couple things, Elizabeth, and you jump in if I'm saying something that's impossible. The timeline we looked at earlier this month would have a draft, the next draft, which we would hope be close to the final draft, to the commissioners for their review and comment on Monday, May 10. And then the commissioners' comments on that draft report would be Wednesday, May 12. To the extent that, and I don't expect it, but to the extent there was something we couldn't all agree on, then just in the interest of time and the fact that this is not our final report, I would probably exercise discretion and simply say, it's going to be something else we'll look at further, as opposed to trying to take the time at that juncture to get us all together to resolve it, because we have more time, and I want to be mindful of the time the county needs to get the interim report out. So, so to get the next draft that this group would look at, it's Monday, May 10, and I will ask you, Elizabeth, I assume that is still a reasonable amount of time, or not?
I think if most of what's needed after this meeting is some sort of fill in the blanks, and there's an executive summary that's missing, as long as there's no more content coming, I think it's doable. And it sounds like, to the extent there might be content at all, it could be fleshed out towards the final report. That's my only clarification. Does anybody think there'll be much more content than what we already have?
Anybody? You think we're reasonably good at this point? Okay. And obviously there's some formatting, and I thought Jasmine did a great job pulling stuff together, but we'll want to make certain things flow in a particular way and the like. But that's an editing function. So that'd be May 10, and then we don't have all the commissioners, but we have most of them, and so we would have I think as soon as we can have it on May 10, Elizabeth, the better. And then, we really want to try to keep that May 12 deadline.
Yeah, I think that I will admit is probably not realistic. I mean, I just, also given other workloads, like I'm looking, I think, even the 13th, I don't know. I think I don't even know how you all are gonna have time to do it all in 36 hours either, but I know we're, leading up to the 31st, but I'm now being realistic.
Well,
And I
so,
think you guys, I don't think we're gonna have it to you by 9 a.m. on the 10th, but certainly by close of business, but then I think your date should be pushed out at least another day.
I agree. I would advocate for my fellow commissioners if we could make it that Friday, but I don't know if that's the 14th. I don't know if that's going to push.
Phil, let me ask a question. I had given you the name of a graduate student. I think she's now going to be a graduate by the time this comes, who in planning, and sent you her resume. I'm wondering if this would be an opportunity for her to help with some of this process.
Yeah,
I spoke to her on the phone. She seems, or maybe I don't think I shared this with Elizabeth because I wanted to run it by you first, but let me ask Elizabeth this question. There's a graduate student I happen to get being introduced to. We talked on a Zoom call. She's very smart. She's getting a master's degree. I can send you all her information, and she is in a gap now where she's graduating and not started her career. She'd love to be an intern, no pay or whatever you got, and she would be helpful to work with us on this. She did a very good job apparently with the Baltimore City Planning Department. Or having a friend who works there, and he'd mentioned her. So if that's allowable, I don't think anything we're doing here is secret. It's all public. If you'd like an intern help that you interview her yourself, if you think she's satisfactory, she may help with some of the legwork and formatting and getting all these things organized and take some of the busy work burden off of you.
Yeah, no, I think, this moment, I think it's probably not, we're in a crunch, as we all know, to get through May, but I'd be curious to see your resume. I will say we do have an intern sort of process, which got shut down from COVID, but I'm hopeful it'll restart. I don't
Why
know.
don't I'll just forward you her contact info and let you take it from there. But I was very impressed with her, and she's done work in Baltimore City government, and I think she could be very helpful. And I think she's relatively available right at this moment too.
Great.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
So let's, where are we now? So are you okay with our conference if they come out on Friday the 14th?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great.
And then the question always is, what's the step after that? Like, when are we final enough so that it can go to the graphic design shop?
Well, when does it need to be final?
I better check that.
Why don't you let us know?
Yeah, let me email them right
Okay,
now.
great. All right. Okay, I think we're good on the timeline for review. Let's go to the survey. Again,
I can pull that up.
Yeah.
So can we just, Phil, do we have, what's the next one for us to get it in? Is that the 14th or the 10th?
It'll be May 14th. I'll send a follow-up email.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
we've gotten a couple more days, which is great.
Okay.
Okay, so now it's on the 14th. Yeah.
I think I'm going to be able to pull up. Do you see this now?
Yes. Yep.
I think the version, well, it says PNR. I think it must have Peter's last comments. How would I check that, Peter? Remind me.
See if there's you got it. There's a red
Right there.
line in there.
There we go.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And
They were minor edits.
Okay, no, I want to.
Good catches, all good catches. So we have the survey. Thank you again for everyone for their efforts in helping put it together. And unless anybody has any comments, I think it's ready to be distributed. And I guess the question would be when that is likely to occur. And Elizabeth may need to check on that and tell us. And then how long would be reasonable in the world of such surveys to wait for responses, because obviously we're going to want to take the data we get back and talk about it and get some expert thoughts about it, and then figure out what we do with it. I've stunned everyone with my comments. So, okay. So I think then Elizabeth, can you, I don't know when the survey, I think we're good with the survey as amended by Peter.
Yeah.
Thank you, Peter. And now the next question is going to be
Right.
What,
So we have to
you know,
put
when
it
it'll
through
be
our,
out.
yeah, we have to put it through our process, go through columns, get it formatted. Not to say it'll take forever, but we can't just take this Word document and ship it out. So I will put that in motion as well.
Okay, and if you can let us know so we have an idea on that timeline as we're planning
Okay.
next steps.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Walsh, please.
Elizabeth, we're assuming also that what comes out of the survey, that your data guys will be able to take that data and put it into some digestible formats for us?
Yes, and I also need to vet the questions to make sure we're getting responses that are formatable. So that's part of the process. But to the extent it's data, as you're asking, Steve, yeah, absolutely. VC Stack can work on that as well.
Cool.
I
Thank
have a feeling we're going to get more subjective type comments, which will also be useful, but maybe, you know, we'll see. But yeah, thank you for flagging that.
And remember, one of our thoughts for the next 6 months, if you will, is the public meeting aspect. And that's something we should discuss at the next meeting, what that might look like, and we'll get some idea of then where the surveys stand in terms of going out and when we could get that input. We've got a number of things that we will be looking at. In addition to, there are obviously recommendations in the interim reports we've talked about them: cooperative purchasing, piggybacking, this issue of how contracts under $25,000 are awarded, extended, continued, and the like. And we've got sustainability. I think I may have mentioned best practices. So we have a fair amount to do, even though I think, in my humble opinion, we've accomplished a lot. That's great on the survey. Okay, last item on the agenda is our upcoming meeting schedule. Given the efforts of everyone to be reviewing the report, the next draft, and offering their comments, and given the chair's scheduling conflict, we decided that the May 13 meeting we would cancel. But I'd like to get a meeting scheduled in May, and I was going to suggest Thursday, May 20, and you know, if that strikes anybody as good, bad, or something else, and if not, we could
What
do
time?
it.
What time? May 20.
Well, I think the afternoon seems to be working. Is that by a show of hands? Everybody good with afternoon still? Okay, everybody all right? Okay. So if we do that, we could do either 2 to 4 or 3 to 5. It's whatever the county folks can accommodate, and either one's certainly fine with me. Elizabeth, is there?
Well, I think that's fine. Either time frame is fine. And I think to the extent we had, for some reason, put a placeholder on certain Thursday mornings, if we, after this meeting or after the May meeting, want to reset for the following months, that would be helpful so we can post it on the public website, et cetera.
Well, let's do that. Well, one of the things we talk about for the afternoon, and again, I want to be mindful of the county folks' schedules, but the thought with the afternoon is it allows people to get some things accomplished during the day in the morning. And that, I think, would let us to look at the 3 to 5 o'clock time frame. Today we did 2 to 4 because of other scheduling issues, but is 3 to 5, that sound okay to everybody?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's aim for May 23 to 5. And that will be great. We've talked a little bit about future times, dates, and topics. Let me go back. I apologize for going back earlier into the agenda, but it has to do with, really, Elizabeth, this is a question for you. This has to do with the logistics of comments being offered by commissioners on this next report.
Yeah.
We'll look for. You want us to send red lines? I mean, what's the best?
Yeah, I want to check with Jasmine on her preference. I don't want to say what my preference is because she's been the, you know, so let's, we can check in with her as soon as tomorrow morning, if not, and Phil, then you're blast out and share that.
And what I was just thinking aloud here a little bit, what I'm wondering is if it would be helpful when people get the next report to go to send their comments to the committee chair. Does that make sense? The subcommittee chairs?
That's helpful.
And then if, for example, if there's disagreement or somebody says, I'm not sure we're ready for that, we need to do X, Y, or Z, then I would ask the subcommittee chairs to note that. It might be better than getting 10 separate, 10 separate set of comments, but it's what everybody wants to do. I'm just trying to be practical.
Well, the more I think about it too, I think said more or less the content is set. We're not adding to it. Now, that doesn't mean everybody has looked at everything thoroughly, but I think, identified where those kind of points are, and that can continue to get sorted out this week, so that we don't have next week or the following week rather being the discrepancy time frame. If that makes we're close to content final, I think. It's more format, et cetera, where we are, except for a few issues flagged today and in email, I think. What do people think?
So the commissioners prefer just to send their comments, and we'll find out how Jasmine would like to have them. Want to just send them in individually and then just do that instead of through the subcommittee chairs? Okay. So I'm open for discussion. I just want to, does that work? All right. If we find out after Jasmine's back that there's some big logistical challenge, then we'll advise everyone by email. We've got some time to be nimble, but let's try to sort that out if we can in the next couple of days so people know what they need to do and when.
Yeah.
Peter, do you have a question?
No.
No, okay. That is all that I have. I want to thank everyone, and Ms. Butler, Ms. Tucker, thank you as always for your insight, and Mr. O'Connor, you as well. Anybody have anything else for the good of the order? We've got 9 minutes left, but anybody have anything else? Oh, yes, Peter.
I will bring up a subject to be considered, not for the interim report necessarily, but Steve actually brought it up initially, and that is the issue of the framework for procurement in Baltimore County. Centralized, decentralized, or a hybrid. Each of them have pluses and minuses, and it seems to me that while not proposing any particular change, it's a good time and incumbent upon us to really consider what is best for the county.
That's a great point for discussion. Anybody have an immediate answer to that? Okay, we'll take a look at that. Great, thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else for the good of the order? Then it is a pleasure to be with all of you, but there are 8 minutes left, and we'll finish there. Oh, but Commissioner Walsh, please.
Sorry, a last minute thought. I know Peter brought up fleet management and the discussion about that being part of our charge. I think Elizabeth had mentioned before that your team was doing an evaluation of fleet management within the county, and after your report, we might see that and might be able to work on that sort of later down the line.
Yeah, so I mentioned several times in different contexts that we currently have this consulting group, Public Works LLC, on a major contract doing what we're calling an efficiency assessment, up and down, all around, including county government and Baltimore County Public Schools. They're going to give us some interim deliverables next week. We, the county executive, their work is and I think has already included some aspects of fleet management. So I think it would be best to see what they come up with. We've also done some preliminary work that we gave to them. So I think it's worthy of this group's consideration from the procurement side, but let's see what they come up with so we don't duplicate efforts.
Yeah, if I can jump in that regard, just on the sustainability side, we did put in for the county to do what it's doing, which is assess for electric vehicles and have charging stations. But there is language in there, and I think also in the code revision, to the extent possible, to coordinate with the school system. It is, after all, half the county's dollars that we pay as taxpayers goes to the county, then it gets handed over to the schools. And if it's necessary, money could go to the schools with strings attached, much like when I was in state government, the federal government would say, you want this highway money or you want this money, here's some requirements that come along with it. There's no reason that, certainly from the sustainability point of view, that the schools should be exempt or be operating on their own scheme when this is all coordinated. And from the public point of view, it's all one, governmental entity. We may see it differently when you're inside, but from the outside, it ought to go across the both. So I just wanted to remake that point. And I didn't make it in the first pass, but we try to, certainly for the sustainability side, the schools ought to be actively involved and fully cooperative with the county's agenda and vice versa.
Elizabeth or Beth, have you published the budget hearing schedule yet for the agencies and the school
That's a good
department?
question, Peter, because I asked somebody for it yesterday and I didn't get it. So let me see where that is, because I personally wanted it. And I don't know if it's online.
Because the school, public schools will come in for a hearing, and the council members are already planning their questions because they have a whole lot of them. So
Let me see if I got that, just so.
So Dan, I think you want to make sure that you sit in on that.
Yeah, Elizabeth, if you could share that with everybody, that'd be great.
Yeah, let me, certainly. Let's see, I'm gonna ask personally and then I'll see if they're online. And then I'll share, yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, anything else? We all good? All right, thank you all very much. And again, if anyone went back to look at prior meetings, I know I've talked about the interim report quite a bit, and you guys have made it happen. Thank you very much. Pleasure to serve with all of you. Be well, and we'll look forward to everybody's comments, and we'll assemble together as a commission on May 20th at 3 o'clock. Have a good one. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.